Loneliness, one of those things that no one really wants to talk about, but apparently it's everywhere. It's there when we're scrolling through social media, when we're busy with different things in our lives, whether we're balling out of control or we're broke. It's even there when we're surrounded by our loved ones. And according to the experts, we're apparently in the middle of an epidemic. So let's talk about it. So I recently wrote a spoken word about loneliness where I personified it as this creature on the prowl, looking and searching for its next victim. You can check that out, link in description. But as usual, after I make these spoken word videos, I like to dive a little deeper into these topics. By the way, I have a little bit of a cold, so excuse the voice today, but we're gonna push forward, we're gonna press through. So like I said before, according to the US Surgeon General, apparently we are in the middle of a loneliness epidemic. That's wild, right? And so they put together this comprehensive, like 82-ish pages of report. It's a lot of pages that talk about this epidemic. And if you want to check that out, I'll also put a link to that in the description. But I don't want to go over the entire report. I just want to give you some of the highlights, some of the cliff notes that I kind of found as I read through this report. So some of the things that they say is that loneliness and isolation is this widespread thing that's been impacting us in ways that affect us mentally and physically. So apparently loneliness isn't just this thing that we feel. It's not just this emotion, but it's something that is a health risk. They say it increases the chances of heart disease by 29%, strokes by 32%, dementia in older adults by 50%, and depression and anxiety have increased over time. It even raises the risk of premature death, and it puts it on par with smoking a certain amount of cigarettes a day and obesity. And here's the part that had me like, okay, wait a minute, this is kind of crazy. Nearly half of the adults in the US are saying that they're experiencing a high level of loneliness or isolation, with the highest rates being among young adults between the ages of 18 and 25. So these are the things that kind of stuck out to me in this report. So I said, this is important and we got to talk about it. So the first thing that I want to do is define what loneliness is, because we all have different definitions in the way we use words. So I want to make sure we're on the same page. Loneliness is an unpleasant emotional response and subjective feeling of being isolated or disconnected from others, even when surrounded by people. Now, I believe that this is something that's normal, something that's human, something that we've all experienced in our lives, even if it's just a little bit. But then that begs the question, what causes this loneliness? And in this report, they actually point to a lot of different things, but I really just want to focus on a few that stood out to me. So I want to start out with what seems like the most obvious, and that's social media. Now, we as a society spend hours on our phone every single day. And I was looking at different studies, and I think they put it somewhere between 6 and 7 hours per day per person. And the ironic thing about that is we have this thing that has connected us more than anything else in history. It's the same thing that's disconnected us even more than anything ever in history. And here's what I believe the problem is. Those connections and interactions with people that we have on the internet aren't quality connections. And the way I like to think about it is like this. If I'm hungry, I can run down to McDonald's down the street, right? I can get some food, it can fulfill my hunger, and I'm no longer hungry. Another option that I have is I can cook a well-balanced meal here at home, right? And again, it's going to solve the same problem. It's going to fulfill my hunger, and I'm no longer going to be hungry. Here's the difference between those two meals though. One offers a lot of nutritional value, and the other is, well, it's McDonald's. I haven't had McDonald's in years. Those nuggets and fries sound real good right now.
Here's a word, focus.
All right, I'm getting distracted, my bad. Back to it. If I continue to depend on that fast food to satisfy my hunger, ultimately, it's gonna have some negative impacts on my health. If I continue to eat the balanced meal, it's going to serve me well. I'm gonna have a lot of nutritional value that gets added to my body. Both of the meals can fulfill my hunger, but one of them will actually cause more and more harm the more that I use it. Social media is the same way. The connections that we are building, the connections that we are creating aren't quality connections. And if we continue to depend on those connections instead of those face-to-face interactions, eventually it's gonna cause more harm than it does good. I can wish a friend happy birthday on a post or in a DM, and it's a nice gesture, but how much more meaningful is it if I connect with that person in real life? I'm telling them happy birthday to their face, and I'm spending time with them. It's a higher quality connection that I'm making. All right, the second thing is a decline in relationships and community. And I want to read a couple stats for you. In 1990, 77% of Americans had 5 or more close friends. By 2021, that dropped to 59%. The percentage of people with 0 close friends quadrupled from 3% to 12%. Time spent with friends has also dropped, especially for younger people. In-person time with friends is down 70%. And lastly, memberships in clubs and organizations in different communities has been on a steady decline. Community has always been an interesting thing to me, right? Because it's something that you can kind of create anywhere. You can create community in your neighborhood. You can create community at your church, at your job, right? There's so many different places that you can create or join communities, but we're just not plugging into those anymore, right? We're kind of just doing our own thing and staying isolated. And the more disconnected that we continue to stay from those communities, the more isolated we continue to feel. And I've talked about this before, and I've even made, spoken words about this, but I think there's value in starting to be involved or join communities that are different from each other or different from the ones that you're used to, right? Different opinions, different beliefs, different backgrounds. I think it stretches us, it sharpens us, it reminds us that connections don't require agreement. But I think the challenge is also that currently in this climate, we're more divided than ever, right? With things like politics and religion and different cultural wars. Like it's made us draw this line in the sand and basically put people on either side, which has made us push people apart. If you don't agree with me or I don't agree with you, then we're not rocking with each other, right? And we go our separate ways. And now it's become a cultural norm to not build relationships with people that we might not see eye to eye with on certain things, right? And so now that we stop building those relationships and now there's less people that we're able to build relationships with, I mean, that can only deepen some of the loneliness and isolation that we may feel. And even myself, someone who is an introvert and someone who I like to claim that I'm a little bit of a lone wolf a lot of the times, I even recognize that I need those social connections. And when I say even I don't mean that as like I'm special. Even people who enjoy their solitude and who like being alone still need to have those connections, those meaningful connections. I mean, and honestly, it's actually a fundamental need. It's almost as important as food and water, or in my case, Chick-fil-A nuggets. I'm just saying, I need my nuggets like I need my relationships. All right, the third thing is major life changes. We're all living this life. We all experience different changes and different things that occur in our lives that kind of shift the way we're living, whether it's moving to a new state, experiencing the loss of a loved one, going from high school to college and you're kind of transitioning that way, or you're going to a new job, or you're switching churches. All those things impact us. And I remember working at a job for years and experiencing the same group of coworkers, going to lunch with the same people. And then suddenly I switched to a different job and had to rebuild everything from scratch. I'm not saying that isolation or that lack of connections automatically is this sad thing that you're experiencing, but it does make you go from feeling like you belong to feeling as though you're on an island and you're kind of, you don't know which direction you want to go in, at least not until you build those new connections. And then of course you have things like the pandemic that magnified a lot of that isolated feeling, right? People were stuck in the house, especially if they lived alone, especially if they were older, especially if they were younger, right? When you're young, it's part of your development to be able to have those social interactions, and we couldn't have them in the same way that we had them before the pandemic. And so that made things like depression and anxiety increase. And that was like overnight too. One day you were kicking it with your boy, and the next you in the house and you can't leave, or you weren't supposed to leave. Some people left. Depends on where you live, right? You know what I'm saying? So here's the thing. Feeling lonely or isolated is human. It's a natural response to not having those connections. And being alone doesn't always mean being lonely. I love my solitude. Literally, when the wife and the kids go to sleep, I'm like, I'm about to kick it for a couple of hours with myself. I be kicking it. Like we be laughing. I be like, I get it. You know what I'm saying? But even with that, I still need those quality relationships, just like you do. And if you're feeling isolated and if you're feeling lonely, do not retreat deeper into that feeling. That's not a good way to go. And let me say this, stop telling yourself that you don't need anybody.
But I don't need anybody. I'm independent.
I hate when people say that because it's not true. It's not true for anybody. None of us are wired to be alone. This doesn't mean you have to have a million friends. This doesn't mean that you have to be married. This doesn't mean that, maybe you can't live alone for a period. But I would encourage you, if you can, to build those connections in any meaningful way possible because it's necessary to our living. And instead of thinking, I don't need anybody, you can instead find community or create community. Invest in your relationships with your friends, with your family. Be open, be kind, be approachable. These are how we create opportunities to create more relationships. Also, social media is cool. I'm on social media all the time, but your deepest and most authentic connections need to be made beyond your screens. Because at the end of the day, no matter how strong you are, no matter how introverted you are, no matter how independent you think you may be, we all need people. So that's pretty much it. That's all I had, but I would like you to check out the spoken word if you haven't seen it. I think it's pretty dope, but I'm a little biased because, I made it. But it's your boy K Soul. Until the next one, peace.